I'm not proud of it, but a couple years ago, when I was a bit younger, I used to be a part of a gang. We weren't a crazy hardcore gang with a bunch of tattoos, and we didn't go around beating random people up for no reason, or getting involved in drive-by shootings. We would just befriend rich kids from the local campus near the house, and then get invited to parties, and then we would rob their friends for dope money. Not at gunpoint or knife point or anything. We just picked up stuff they'd leave lying around. Simple things, stuff like iPads and smartphones. Like I said, this wasn't exactly Godfather. Another thing we were involved in was pickpocketing. I'm not making excuses here. Back then, I was selfish and pretty out of control. If you'd met me back then, I most likely would have been looking for a way to get a buck out of you. But things change, and people grow up, and that's what I did. The story I'm about ready to tell you probably had a lot to do with that. There's nothing like brushing against true evil to get you to take a long, hard look at yourself in the mirror. I'm not proud of it, but it's a part of my past. I'm a different person now, but it just seemed like crazy fun to us. Sure, it wasn't nice, but we didn't figure it was any serious kind of crime. We didn't hurt people or anything. Sometimes after a big party, spring break and other specific periods like that, my crew, which was only composed of 5 guys and a chick, would literally end up with a pile of stolen tech we had to sell. Big outdoor music festivals were great for hitting pockets and handbags. In the summer of 2009, my buddies and I were working at a pretty big music festival on the East Coast. I won't name the name here because a number of my buddies are still in the game and I don't want to cause trouble for anyone. But it was pretty big and pretty wild. Again, I'm not making any excuses, but working big music festivals like this one was actually really hard work. They are crawling with security. Picking pockets and bags in the crowds is easy enough, but then getting your stash out of the venue had to be run like a military operation. You need wire cutters to put holes through the chain link fences and kit bags to carry the stash, and you need to be slick. You've got a pretty small window you can work with, so you gotta work fast. It's not rocket science. You spot a target, nod at a member of your crew who makes a point of bumping into someone in the target's line of sight. You strike in that moment when their focus is diverted and vanish into the crowd. Sometimes you swap around. You get better at it with practice. Anyway, at the end of the festival, our stash is ridiculous. The only girl in our crew distracts the handful of security guys, still stumping past all the drinking bottles and junk laid all over the floor of the venue. Long enough for me and a buddy to slide what's left of our stash in a kit bag through the hole of the chain link fence to a buddy waiting on the other side. The whole crew, 6 people in total, meets up on the other side and decide to hit the woods to celebrate a job well done. Wait until daybreak and then head towards our hotel room. At least that's the plan. It's kind of weird to think about it, but while the other partygoers are cutting loose dancing and getting high, my crew and I were working hard, so we didn't get the clock off until late in the day. It's almost 3:30 by the time we stumble into the backwoods behind the venue, and one of my buddies lights up a well-deserved joint. We light a fire in a secluded spot and gather around it. It's the last one of the summer festivals, and the air is already crisping up a little bit. My one buddy, our sorta unofficial leader, suggests we start going through the stash to see what we got. This is pretty typical after a big job like this one. The guys I used to roll with were all pretty good at jailbreaking phones. I hate to tell you, but I was too back then, and still kinda am. The guys liked to go through phones and iPads and see what kind of stuff they could find. One of the times in the past, one of the guys in my crew had managed to blackmail the son of an oil company billionaire. You never knew what skeletons you might find in the people's dark hidden places. He blackmailed the kid for months before finally releasing the images online anyway. I didn't approve of that sort of thing, and I didn't really get involved in it myself, but a few of my friends did. Beyond that, they'd go through phones for nude selfies that hot chicks had taken for their boyfriends, and other stuff like that. My buddy, the leader, suggests we start jailbreaking the phones while we drink and get high to save from having to do it all in the morning. My friend pulls out a phone from his kit bag. It was a beat-up Samsung with a well-worn Hello Kitty sticker on it. He struggles to unlock it, and then hands it over to the dude in our crew who's best with that sort of thing. We called him Geek, mainly because he was the tech one. Geek sets to work on the phone the other guy was struggling with, and within a couple of minutes, he's raising his eyebrows and gritting his teeth. The phone's proving harder to crack than it should be. The rest of the crew don't even notice Geek's having trouble. Two of our crew are play fighting, and our chick is giggling against the night air and singing love songs at the moon. And by this point, we're plenty through our stash of beers. The air is filled with smoke. I'm probably the most sober one here at the time. I lean over to Geek and ask him what's up. He raises his voice. He never used to raise his voice. And he said, "Hey guys, check this out, it's kinda weird." My crew gather around the phone that's in his hand and flips through the video library on it. There's almost 20 videos on the phone. Each one, from the thumbnail, looks like a grainy green and black image that's hard to distinguish at first. They are all videos taken through a night vision filter of some sort. He clicks on one to play, and the crew falls silent as we strain to make out the audio playing through the phone. We can hear boots crunch gravel on the video. Someone films their own feet as they walk through a garden towards a house in the darkness. The guy's wearing big heavy-duty boots. The crew shuffles impatiently around the phone as nothing much happens on the first video. Then the video starts to get weird. The person holding the camera is working his way through a house now. The house is dark and its occupants appear to be asleep. Then it gets even weirder. The person holding the camera works his way into an upstairs bedroom. Through the night vision filter, we can see a couple in bed, side by side asleep. Then from off the camera, a knife comes into view. The dude holding the camera is wearing black leather gloves. He traces the blade across the exposed throat of the man, not firm enough to cut or wake him up. It's like the creep is just playing with him. Then he traces the blade across the sleeping lady's bare leg. He reaches across with his gloved hand and strokes her hair. In her sleep, the girl assumes it's her boyfriend's hand and she bats it away gently. The creep's breathing is all you can make out on the audio. Thanks to the night vision filter, we get a clear view of her face. The video freeze frames on her peaceful sleeping face, and that's it. "Man, this is weird," Geek whispers, and no one in the crew disagrees. "Are they all like that?" someone else asks. Geek shuffles through the rest of the video, and a minute passes as he checks them and nods with a gulp. Apparently they are. Everyone wants to get back to getting high and forget about this creep's video library. I guess I'm the most spooked because I'm the most sober. As the rest of the crew gets back to going through the other stolen phones and getting high, I find myself wondering. I try to think back to the crowd at the music festival. I feel like a million people's faces flashed past my eyes that day. I sat there in the middle of the night, trying to remember if I was the one that took that silver Samsung with a Hello Kitty sticker, trying to see if I could remember the face of whoever I took it from. My memory is a haze of mixed faces, dancing and high, but I figure it was me. I remember the phone in my hand, the flash of silver and the distinct sticker on it, but whenever I try to visualize the dude whose pocket I swiped it from, all I can picture in my mind is a head without a face on it, just blank. A shiver runs through my spine. It's pretty late and I'm pretty tired already. I tell the crew I figured it's time to head back towards our hotel, but the rest of them are having fun already, having totally forgotten about this creepy stuff we all just saw. I tell them I'm heading home, and they all hardly notice. Geek hands me a couple of kit bags full of stolen phones, and he asks me to take them with me back to base. I figured I'm the most sober one here, so I probably should. I head back through the woods, alone. It's past 4 a.m. by now, but there's no sign of the sun coming up anytime soon. I have a kit bag full of stolen phones over each shoulder, and I'm jogging as quick as I can. I've not been jogging long through the darkness when I start to think it was a really bad idea to leave the others. Their laughter and clank of their beer bottles has long faded into the distance behind me. Then the eerie silence is pierced by the sound of a ringtone. It's some sort of classical orchestra music. I know it's not my phone, that's for sure. People with missing phones often call their own phones, hoping to find it's just been misplaced. They don't usually call this late at night, that's for sure. I drop the kit bag in the middle of the clearing by the moonlight and start going through them. You can probably guess which phone is the one that's ringing. Sure enough, I fish out the silver Samsung with the Hello Kitty sticker. I feel it vibrating in my palm. Of course it was going to be this phone, I think to myself. It had to be this phone. The caller ID is blocked. I answer. On the other side of the phone, I hear heavy breathing. Hello? Nothing but breathing. I'm getting ready to hang up when the voice finally speaks. You have the wrong phone, it says. This isn't some kid fooling around. This guy is serious. This voice is being distorted through some sort of filter. It sounds like it's passed through some sort of voice box that they give people with throat cancer. It sounds like a robot or something, like it's only half human. When this sort of thing usually happened to me, the guys in my crew would talk smack and then hang up. But this was different. I was all on my own in the middle of the woods, in the middle of the night. And this was the phone with those videos on it. What do you want, dude? I asked him, trying not to sound as scared as I actually was. But at this point, I wasn't fooling anybody. The guy on the other end can smell my fear down the line. You have exactly one chance to walk out of this alive. Hang up this phone, put it on the ground exactly where you are, pick up those 2 sports bags of yours, and run your little self home as fast as your little legs can carry you. I remember thinking to myself, how does he know I have 2 bags in front of me? And then it dawns on me, he was watching me. From somewhere in the woods right now. Suddenly, I scan my surroundings, expecting to see a pair of red devil eyes looking back at me or something. But what's even more scary is I see nothing at all, just dense woods and bushes, and yet I know he's out there somewhere. My heart just starts thumping out of my chest. I hang up, drop the phone and pick up the bags, and run faster than I ever have before. From the main road beyond the woods, I call the crew in panic, but they're too wasted and too high to take what I'm saying seriously. They tell me to go sleep it off, even though they know I'm sober. I get back to the hotel and spend what's left of the night staring at the walls, watching for daylight to come. They stumble home mid-morning the next day. Turns out they slept in the woods without incident. No one takes me seriously. I wasn't an angel growing up by any means, but this was the first and only time during my life of crime that I felt myself brush up against true evil. After that night, I distanced myself from my old crew. I got a job at Target. Not exactly ideal, but it was the step in the right direction, away from the wrong path. It's hard to walk away from quick and easy money. Fast forward several months, and I'm in a store buying a carton of milk when something stops me dead in my tracks. They usually put pictures of missing people on milk cartons in my state, and on the one staring back at me is a face I know. Unmistakably, no doubt about it, it's the girl from the video on the phone. She's been missing for months apparently. A chill runs down my spine. Could this just be a weird coincidence? Every bone in my body tells me it's not. It can't be. I don't know what happened to her, or any of the other people in those videos. Were they all his targets? Was he scoping them out? And for what? What did he do to them? Were all the other people in the other videos missing too? And to think that I brushed up close enough to that guy to steal his phone right out of his pocket. To think that he was there among all those people at the big music festival, drinking and getting high, not with horns on his face, nor with goat legs, not floating 3 feet in the air, acting like a ghost. He was just a guy with a face so ordinary and forgettable that all I can ever see in my head is blank each time I try to picture it. Just thinking about it sends shivers down my spine. Sometimes at night, I find myself thinking about that night in the woods all those years ago. Part of me wishes I'd turned the phone into the cops or something, but the other part of me is pretty sure that that creep had no intentions of letting me out of the woods alive if I'd done anything other than exactly what he told me to do. The worst thing about it all is he's still out there, and whatever he's still doing it right now. Not me though. I'm out of that life. These days I'm good. I only hope that that dude in the woods is out of that life too, but somehow I don't think so. It's been 2 months since this happened, and I need to try to tell this story. Please, I don't expect anyone to believe me, but if there's anyone out there at all who can help, anyone who might have gone through something similar, I need to find you. Out of respect for the memory of her, I won't give any specific details that aren't necessary. 2 months ago, my partner of 8 years and I were spending a weekend in our house. We were supposed to go visit her parents' house, but had too much work to do, so I convinced her to stay in. But it wasn't anything beyond a simple bicker. It did kind of kill the mood, and we didn't speak that day. It was a Saturday. I needed to work, so I took my computer into the living room. Normally we wake up, make breakfast, talk for a bit, and we do our own thing if we're busy. But we didn't do anything that day. I remember changing, grabbing my computer, and glancing at her before closing the door. She was under the sheets and had her headphones on. When she's in this mood, she can go a day without talking. For me, it's harder, but I left without saying anything. Her eyes didn't leave her screen. A few hours later, I get a Facebook notification from her. It was a YouTube link to the song Baby Come Back by Player. This was her way of ending a tense situation. We would sometimes communicate by sending each other songs whenever we were away or couldn't talk. I don't want you all to think that our relationship was broken. It wasn't. We were happy, but after 8 years, it started to change. There was just more silence. I responded by sending her another song. I honestly forgot what it was, but it was probably something about saying sorry or something romantic. After that, I was on my way to open the door to the bedroom when I went instead to the front of the house where we have flowers growing on the windowsill. I still remember the silence and the beauty of that moment. It was the first break I had from my work, and I just fell into a meditative state as I cut each purple flower and gathered it into a bundle. I went back into the living room and opened the door. There she was, still in bed, but the first thing that I noticed was there was something wrong with her eyes. They were unfocused. Their line of sight was just above the screen and slightly outward facing. Her lips were tight, but there was no expression on them. She looked like a doll. She was lying back on the pillows, her hair gathered neatly around her, perfectly symmetrical, without a strand out of place. I called her name, but she didn't move. I touched her hand and it was ice cold. Her legs were perfectly straight under the blankets. Her toes were poking out from beneath the sheets, and the fuzzy socks she was wearing were folded neatly beside her feet. I shook her, and her hands fell from the computer laptop. They clenched as soon as they left the keyboard. I kept shaking her, hoping she'd react, but she just slumped into the mattress. Her body was warm and soft, but her hands were cold and clenched. She was cold and stiff from her neck up. She didn't have a pulse, but I didn't think to check until I had screamed and shaken her for minutes. I was dumbfounded. The ambulance came and pronounced her dead at the scene. They questioned me for hours. I don't want to talk about any of that. The only thing that matters is this. It was not her. Her prints matched, her DNA, anything that could be used to identify her identity by the state matched positive, but it was her, legally and reasonably her, but I knew it wasn't. The body I walked in on was something else. Her face was all wrong. Her eyes were too far apart and shaped differently. Her teeth were smaller and more square, and the wrong color. Her hands were smaller, but only by a fraction, and the shape of her nails were different. These are the things that are the easiest to quantify. But even then, I can't fully explain to you what was different in a measurable way. The rest of her body had slight imperfections that deviated from the person I had come to know intimately. When you know a person deeply, when you know how they sit, stand, and every mannerism and gesture and habit, when you know someone else better than you know yourself, you know them when you see them, and this was not her. When I was asked to identify her body, after much hesitation, I finally said it was her. After all, who would believe me that it wasn't? That's not the only thing I lied about. Before anyone arrived on the scene, I closed the laptop and put it in her desk. I didn't see what was on the screen. I didn't care to. When the initial shock had passed, however, I felt a growing sense of dread about what could have been on the screen. Her headphones were still plugged in. There were still sounds coming from them when I found her. I know it's probably just her Spotify playlist and a Word document. She was working on a report herself that morning, but no matter how much I tell myself this, I can't bring myself to open the laptop and see for myself. I think I'm obsessed with unimportant details here, but that's all I can do to try and assert some control over this narrative. For all the observations that reassure me in my belief, I can't stop thinking about the way her socks were folded by her feet and how combed her hair was. She never took her socks off in bed or folded them. Details are all I can think of. All I can say is this: my partner is gone, and I don't know what happened to her, but it wasn't her that was taken by the ambulance. When I was around 13, my mom and my toddler-age sister and I lived with our 2 cats and a German Shepherd named Chico in a 3-story, 1800s converted blacksmith shop in North Hyde Park, Vermont on Ferry Street. My mom and I and our family and friends that visited all had paranormal experiences there. While living there, my mom was restoring the building, and we had great respect for the house and its property. And nothing that occurred seemed violent or malevolent. It was just unnerving at the time. Through research, we came to believe that the presence was Edward, the blacksmith that once owned and worked in the building. Starting from the bottom, the house had a basement that I never went into, though my mom did. The first floor was a family room the size of the whole house, with the back having a separate laundry and tool room. The second floor had the kitchen, living room, my little sister's room, and a bathroom. The third floor was a converted attic with my room and my mom's room at either end, and a closet and office between them, and huge decorative grates in the floors that allowed you to see all the way through the spaces from my bedroom on the third floor down to the stove on the first floor. It was both awesome and creepy. Our first incident happened in the middle of the night after our housewarming party. My mom's brother and his girlfriend were getting ready to go to sleep on the futon on the first floor in front of the wood stove. Both of them heard a man call for our dog, Chico, to come down the stairs to where they were. We were all super freaked out by it, but tried to ignore it. Chico seemed fine. He ran to the voice with his tail wagging. More things started happening. I'm not sure about the order. We got home one night, and my sister and I were sleeping in the car, while my mom ran to unlock the door and go to the bathroom. She couldn't find her key, and was struggling to get the door open, and was in a real hurry. Suddenly, the door opened for her. Having numerous experiences with paranormal activity in her life, my mom took this well, even thanking the ghost for his help. He wasn't always that friendly, though. Another time, she was playing jazz on her grand piano on the first floor, and the tool room door loudly slammed behind her. She was startled, but reacted by communicating back to him and saying, "Fine, I'll switch to classical." One day, my mom left for work before the school bus picked me up. Her boyfriend at the time was still in bed on the third floor, and I was outside waiting for the bus. I looked back up towards the house and clearly saw someone staring out of the middle first floor window where the original large sliding blacksmith doors were. I thought it was my mom's boyfriend, putting wood in the fire, looking out to check on me. I waved and walked back to the house to say good morning. I opened the door with a smile, but that quickly fell off when I found there was no one in the room and her boyfriend was still snoring upstairs. There was one incident that still has my mom and I questioning ourselves to this day. We were both upstairs in our beds. It was around 9 p.m. and we were both awake reading before bed. My little sister was at her father's house for the night. Suddenly, the sound of an enormous sheet of glass shattering into a million pieces filled the house, and we both bolted out of our beds, running for each other. We raced together down the stairs toward the living room on the second floor. We had both assumed that my mom's giant antique round mirror had fallen off the wall. We turned on the light to find the mirror perfectly safe. We researched the entire house, every window, picture, sliding glass door, untouched and no broken glass anywhere. That was a hard night to fall asleep, but we managed. We lived there for a few more years while my mom gradually refurnished the house and its gardens. The activity lessened and eventually stopped. We joked that Edward had enough of living with 3 girls. I moved out and my mom and sister stayed there for a few more years. Then, when my mom moved in with her now husband, I came back to the house to help clean and prepare it for selling. The house was totally empty of furniture. It was a sunny day and I had the windows and doors open, music on, and I was by myself. My mom was going to join me after work, and I was also expecting a friend to drop by. I had swept, mopped, and oiled the wood floors on the first floor, and I was in my little sister's room on the second floor. The walls were a beautiful dark blush color with fairy decals scattered everywhere. It was my task to carefully scrape them off, and I had my back to the doorway. I can't remember if I heard a door opening, but I do remember the weight and speed of someone running up the stairs to the second floor and walking up to the doorway of the room where I was in. I assumed it was my mom or my friend, and I kept scraping as I waited for them to identify themselves. They didn't say anything. I turned around. There wasn't anyone there. I was still alone in the house. I dropped my scraper, ran down the stairs out the door, and sat on a rock in the sun until my friend got there. My mom showed up shortly after, and I told them what happened. They both believed me, and we looked around the house together. On the first floor, coming out of the tool room, we clearly saw large barefooted footprints in a scattered pile of sawdust. Keep in mind that I had just thoroughly cleaned the floors. My mom and my friend had just gotten there. None of us had been in that room, and all 3 of us had our shoes on the entire time. Not to mention that when we held our feet up to the prints, they were almost twice as big, and it had an extremely wide gait that was awkward for us to mimic. That was the last time I was at that house, and I have to say, I think Edward was saying goodbye. Either that, or maybe he was glad the fairies were finally coming off his walls. I hope you all enjoyed that last one. I really want to thank Elena for sharing that personal story with me and allowing me to use it on this video. Like I've said before in the description of my videos, if you guys want to share any personal stories with me, I would gladly love to check them out and put them on any future videos. I'm always looking for new stories that are fun to read and give me some new content to use. If you have a story you want to submit, you can send it to me either through YouTube, personal message, just through my inbox, or I'll put my email down at the bottom and you can send it through that. Either one's fine. And one last thing, a couple days ago I noticed I reached 3,000 subscribers, and I want to thank every one of you for watching my videos and sharing my content and just supporting my channel overall. I really never thought that I'd reach this point, at least this quick. I mean, I've only been making videos since June, and yeah, it's been fun so far, and I look forward to making many more in the future. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.